Now I want to add some trees to the scene. I'm thinking of some nice pine trees just behind the house. That could look nice. I've added the grass to a new layer and I've hidden it just to speed up my render times. And it's probably gonna stay hidden until the last stages of this project. So now let's merge in some trees from the plants folder. I'm gonna start with the pines. Okay, I have made two models with GrowFX, one larger, one slightly smaller, and I have not converted them to meshes yet. And that's because I might want to create some variations before doing that. Okay, so they are a bit slowish since the poly count is quite high. And I think this size is too small, so I'm gonna scale them up. Okay, like that. And let's switch to 4 viewport display so we can see exactly what's going on when we move those trees. Alright. Let's rotate them around a bit. Okay, something like this looks nice. Scale it up. Make sure they are in the ground. Okay, that's good. Maybe let's make a few more copies. I'm gonna copy the smaller tree. Okay, somewhere over here maybe. Make a copy and I'm gonna randomize it by using a random seed in the GrowFX parameters. It's a very quick way to get a whole different model from your existing GrowFX model. You should just click it a couple of times until you get some nice results. Okay, like that. I think it's good enough. Maybe let's rotate it a bit and see how it looks. Okay. And maybe let's copy the large tree as well. Okay, somewhere over here maybe. To fill the area a bit. I'm just gonna make an instance and rotate it a bit. And one more smaller pine a bit further in the distance. And just rotate it around. Maybe make a bit smaller. Okay, and now I'm just going to select this whole group. And using the screen reference coordinate system, I'm gonna move it to the left, or minus on the x-axis. So just trying to get a nice composition there. Right, I think that looks decent. Let's select our pines, isolate the selection, and start setting up the materials. Okay. So it has three material IDs. First for the trunk, second for the branches, and the third one for the needles. Let's start with the needles. So basic wear material. Let's set the needle color to something like this. And make them slightly reflective. Just like this. Okay, let's preview the results. Right, not too bad. Maybe let's make this a bit more saturated and slightly more reflective. Maybe give it a slight green tint in the reflection slot. Re-render. The needles look pretty good, I think. Maybe we can try a fall-off map in the diffuse slot. Okay, so let's set up two colors. One slightly more desaturated and lighter, and the second one darker. Okay, and re-render. That's a bit nicer. Maybe the hue is a bit wrong. Let's make it more towards the yellows. No, I think it's good. Let's move on to the trunk. Okay, I'm gonna go to Photoshop, open up my textures folder, and I think we're gonna use this map here. And first I want to slightly change the colors. I want to make it a bit brighter. And maybe change the tint a bit. Get a bit more saturation like that. Let's save it. Now let's create the bump map by just reducing the saturation and increasing the levels to give it more contrast like this. And this is going to be our displacement. And we are ready to set up the material. So first let's start with the basic VRAY material. Set up the diffuse as a bitmap using this texture here. Okay, let's check why it doesn't show. Let's render and see if it's correct. Okay, it just doesn't show up in the viewport, but it's fine in the renders. So that's okay. And if you zoom in, it looks like the tiling is okay. You can probably fix it by clicking the update button on the GrowFX object. Yep. So I'm going to select my tree, zoom in, and check the tiling. Okay, maybe we need to increase it a bit. So 1.6 by maybe 2.1. That looks okay. Let's copy the map to the reflect slot. Set the color to gray and blend them both together at maybe 30% of the map, okay, 40% of the map, and 60% of the gray color. Reduce the glossiness. Turn on Fresnel, set it maybe 3. Okay, fine. And copy the map to bump slot. And change it to the black and white version. And I'm going to reduce the blur to maybe 0.5. Let's render and see how it looks. Okay, maybe a tiny bit too reflective. And maybe the bump is too weak. Try it at 60 and bring the reflections down by bringing down the reflect color. Okay, and I'm also gonna reduce the blurring on the diffuse texture, maybe 0.2. That'll be fine. Let's check and see. Okay, looks quite nice. I think we can copy this material to the branch slot. Check again. That's quite nice. And now only the last step left, or the displacement. I'm gonna save before that. Okay, so basically what I want to do is go to my trunk material and copy the bump map to the displacement slot. I'm gonna reduce the blurring for the displacement and change the displacement amount to maybe 1.5. And we can try to test it out on a small square like this. Let's render and see how it looks. So it takes quite a bit of time to calculate now, as is usual with the displacement. So let's just wait for that to finish. Okay, so here's the result. And I think it looks alright. Maybe slightly too weak. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna set the displacement amount to something like 2.5 and leave it at that. So for now, we're just gonna turn off the displacement and turn it back on for our final renders, since I don't think there's much else that needs it for now. Okay, so let's save and proceed with adding something more. Right, let's unhide all. And I want to add some small bushes over here on the left side of the house. So I'm gonna merge in the bushes from the plants folder. Okay, here they are. And again, these are GrowFX objects. And place them maybe here. I'm just gonna freeze everything else for now by pressing Ctrl I to invert my selection and then just freezing. Right, and now let's position these bushes. Maybe let's make it a bit larger. Make sure it's on the ground. Rotate perhaps. And move the second one a bit like this. And scale larger as well. Okay. So as you can see, these bushes have some flowers in them. And let's say we're only going to use those flowers in the summer scene. Okay, let's set up the materials. Let's render and see how it looks first. And again, we have three materials. First one for the trunk. I'm not going to make anything too complicated. Just a basic brownish material, since it's so far away and the stems are so tiny. There's no need to make any textures or stuff like that. Just some basic colors. Okay, so for the leaves, I'm going to use V-Ray two-sided with regular V-Ray material as the front, and maybe make it dark green and very saturated. Okay, with pretty reflective colors, pretty reflective surface like this. Okay, re-render, and that's all right. And finally we have the flowers. I'm going to use a V-Ray material with some bright yellow color to it. Or maybe let's make it pink. Let's make it pink. So tiny, not too noticeable flowers. And basically that's the material. Maybe make it a bit more reflective and more saturated for the leaves. Okay, nice. Unhide all. And I think they look quite good. Maybe let's raise the left bush slightly upwards, so you can see a bit of the stems. Okay, so those are done. We can change the object display to display as a box, just to make our viewport faster. And I'm gonna do the same thing for the pines in the background. Just make them appear as boxes, so they don't slow down our scene. Okay, that's nice. And now I'm going to create a new layer for the trees. And let's add all the pines and both of the bushes. Okay, and let's freeze it for now. Right, so I want to add a few more trees. And now I'm going to use the trees max file from the plants folder. Okay, it has some poplar trees and some linden trees. And again, they are GrowFX objects. So this might slow down loading of the scene. So once you're satisfied that you will not be making any changes to the geometry of those trees, you can collapse them to editable meshes. So it doesn't go through this creating meta meshes process every time you open the scene. So let's wait for it to finish. And I'm going to move the trees somewhere out of the way. For example, here on the side. Okay, let's isolate the selection and see what we got there. Okay, so my plan is to use these 3 trees on the left to create a forest in the background, and this one for some closer angles somewhere in the grassy field behind the house. Okay, so maybe let's set up the materials. Okay, so pick from the tree, and the trunk. Okay, I'm gonna use a basic bark texture like this one. Let's click update to see how it looks on the trunk. And I think the tiling is pretty good and there's no need to mess with it at all. Okay, so that's the trunk, and just make it a bit more bumpy, maybe slightly reflective, very blurry reflections, and give it some bump. And just basically a desaturated version of the diffuse texture. That's gonna be fine. And we can test it out by creating a V-Ray camera here and just rendering this tree. The trunk looks okay. Now let's make a material for the leaves. And for the leaves, again, I'm going to use V-Ray two-sided. Give it some reflections. Blur them a bit. Just a very basic material. Since these leaves will not be seen up close, there's no need to create any textures, alpha maps, or all sorts of complications that will probably be not even seen in the final renders. So I'm just going to use a very basic material. Okay, looking good. Maybe let's make this a bit brighter. And a bit more reflective, like this. And I think that's going to be fine. Now for these other trees, I'm going to convert them to meshes. Okay, and I'm going to create a new material. Okay, so this will be Linden, and let's make a copy and name it Poplar. And for these trees I'm going to use a darker and diffuse color, like this. And assign the material, render, see how they look. And not too bad. I think it's gonna be fine. Maybe just make the trunk slightly different colored as well. So to do that, I'm just gonna mix it with a gray color in the diffuse slot. So let's say at 80. Okay, make the bump stronger and make that diffuse color maybe dark brown. And let's leave it at that. Alright. So now I'm going to take my linden tree and I'm going to unhide all. And move it somewhere over here in the background. Okay, scale it larger. Move it around. That's nice. Let's make a copy over here. And I'm gonna modify this tree by scaling it down a bit and by changing the seed of the GrowFX object. Okay, let's turn off the meta meshes for now, just until we are sure this is what we want. Okay, and you can easily create infinite variations of trees made with GrowFX by using this seed option here. Okay, good. I'm gonna move it back slightly. And maybe make one more copy somewhere further in the background. And make this one smaller. Okay, let's try some random seeds. Move it up a bit. And render and see how it looks. Okay, maybe move them around a bit. Maybe move it further away. Okay, so I think that's good. We have all our foreground trees in place. Let's save the scene and add some forest in the background.